fame might also play into this play with pronouns, because I is another also indicates this split between him in his own person and the Bob Dylan persona. I mean, just think about our beautiful intro where he says, "Who's Bob Dylan?" You know.
Who's Bob Dylan?
How could I answer that if you got the nerve to ask me?
It happened so long ago, I wasn't even born.
A song that doesn't pussyfoot around nor turn a blind eye to human nature. Who threw that glass to the street?
Yeah, this is
Who did it?
I'm a translation good animal, my soul. Admit my return.
How about rat?
I'm afraid to go on the internet. I'm afraid some pervert's gonna lure me somewhere.
You want some eggs?
Check out my new hat.
Oh my god! Wait, bring it closer to the.
For the listeners, I got a hat, which is a bootleg of Laura's merch, and it's a picture of Laura's hat on the front of the hat.
That's the best thing I've ever seen. I need one.
Really poorly made. The shade of gray doesn't match at all. As it should, right?
As it should be. If it's bootleg merch, I think it should be like, subpar quality.
The edges were already coming up when I got it. And I'm wondering, do you think that this would be marketable? I'm kind of doing advertisement for you, for your hats.
I love it. I think, it's worth a shot.
I mean, these could be collector's items in 50 years. So I'm not sure
as could the actual Definitely Dylan baseball hats.
Well, yes, of course. Whoa. Do you hear that? Okay.
Blasted some Eminem.
Yeah. Jeez. Anyway, that's all I had. Hats. Should I put these up on Etsy?
Sure. I definitely want one. Nice. I need one. It might be. I don't quite know what it's gonna look like when I wear one, but it's me advertising your bootleg merch of my merch.
Yeah,
and so the circle closes.
It's like Bob selling the bootleg series.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly. My name is Laura Tenchett.
My name is Rebecca Slayman, and this is
the Bob Dylan Hotline, where we answer your questions about all things Bob.
Hello, Laura and Rebecca. This is Laura. I was hoping you two could join forces and help me out with something. I've been recently thinking about Bob Dylan's pronouns. Not in a woke way. I'm assuming his personal pronouns are he, him. But I've been thinking about how he uses pronouns in his songwriting. For example, Joni Mitchell has observed that he likes to use you in his autobiographical songs. And she has said that she thinks there's a certain amount of self-protection built into that. And I think that's really interesting. But essentially, I have a note where I have been jotting down ideas, and that note is getting longer, and I don't want these ideas to die in my drafts. So please help me out. Please talk about it. Good luck.
Thank you, Laura, for sending in that question.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
So I'm really excited to talk about this today. I think this will be a really intriguing subject, and I want to hear all your thoughts.
Yay! Yeah, I think I just thought since this is our show, we can stretch the limits of what we allow in terms of questions and in terms of topics. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this as well. And I just want to preface this with obviously Bob Dylan is an artist where almost every aspect of his songs has been overanalyzed and poured over. And so I just wanted to start out by saying that what I'm thinking, or what I've been thinking about, is not about overanalyzing Bob Dylan and trying to figure out some deep hidden meanings, why he uses certain pronouns, and I don't know. It's more coming from a place of being interested in language and how Bob Dylan uses language to convey ideas, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly. And I think because pronouns are such an integral building block of language, they can have a subtle and sometimes almost unconscious effect on how we hear a certain statement or hear a certain narrative. And I also think that Bob Dylan himself has spoken about the impact that different pronouns and playing with pronouns can have on his songs. So I think that's why it's worth taking a closer look.
Absolutely. I love that kind of English class close reading analysis of song lyrics. I feel, especially in like the more popular discussions about Bob Dylan, that kind of close reading is like not the center focus. So, yeah, I'm happy to get into it.
Great. Do you have any thoughts before I just like barrel on with my notes? Do you want to like say something on the topic? Have you thought about this before?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I thought of pronouns, I was immediately thinking about like when he covers a song, he never changes the pronouns. That's what happens when you Google Bob Dylan pronouns, other than he uses he, him. It's like, that's a cool thing about when Bob Dylan covers things. The
He's funny that way, right?
Well, yeah,
It's
that's
maybe
the
the
only one, yeah, where it's like he intentionally made it gay. But I think it's really cool how when Bob Dylan sings a song like Dink's song and he's singing from the perspective of a woman, it's like fully embodied in that way. Um, and I just had something, I'm not sure if I said it on the podcast before. I had an observation that I've been trying to also just like get out, which is in Masters of War, he refers to his unborn child. And it's also like a lyric taken from Dink's song. And I think that's really interesting as a
Oh.
man, how he is referring to his child unborn and unnamed. It's like not a typical like male observation. And I feel like it is influenced by him doing Dink's song that he would like have that association of words and that idea. Yeah, so that's just a little
Oh,
side.
I didn't realize that that comes from Dink's song.
Yeah,
What's the lyric there?
my unborn child.
Oh yeah, okay, right. Oh yeah, yeah. I think I
Yeah,
remember
the
now.
whole
Yeah.
story of the song is like it's a pregnant woman who's hi, this is Rebecca. Sorry, I didn't really make my point here. The interesting thing about Bob Dylan covering Dink's song, which was a folk song much like House of the Rising Sun, where it is about a woman's perspective, and especially in this one, where it's about a woman becoming pregnant and being abandoned by the father of her child. It's very interesting that Dylan chooses to sing this song and embodies it very well, despite being a man. And if he had changed the pronouns or the gender in the song, it wouldn't have made sense at all. Um, yeah, that's just something interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think for me, one way of getting into this topic, or that kind of started me off, was that Bob Dylan himself has spoken about this breakthrough that he had in writing around the time of Blood on the Tracks. And he has spoken about specifically the song Tangled Up in Blue. He really enjoyed playing with pronouns and how that affected the narrative. And I think you can hear that when you listen to the original New York version that he recorded, where the pronouns kind of stay the same. And then when he records it in Minneapolis, the pronouns constantly shift between he and I. And then there's a them, and I'm gonna back again. I got to get to them somehow, or I've got to get to her somehow, and I think that this was a breakthrough for him because it allowed him plausible deniability, really. Because he has spoken about Tangled Up in Blue one time on stage in 1978. He said that that's a song that, quote, took me 10 years to live and I think 10 minutes to write. And one would assume that he was thankful to have found a mode that allowed him some distance in how he wrote about this song that did have an autobiographical dimension, clearly. I mean, he says it took him 10 years to live, right? And I think that really fascinates me. And the idea that actually Joni Mitchell shows up here again as well. I mean, she spoke about Bob Dylan's pronouns in a couple of instances. For example, as I mentioned in the voice note, she said that Bob Dylan uses you instead of I, and we'll get to that as well. But I was always fascinated with the fact that Joni Mitchell heard the New York sessions for Blood on the Tracks at a party and considered it a masterpiece. And then when she heard the released album with the Minneapolis sessions, half re-recorded, she considered a cop-out. And she said that this was him reasserting his masculinity, and said that the New York sessions were closer to a Joni Mitchell record. So Joni Mitchell told David Yaffe, her biographer, rest in peace, he's since passed away, "One night I had a party here and Bob crashed it. And the bootleg of that first Blood on the Tracks was playing. They were out in the garden and somebody said that Bob wanted to see me. And the bootleg was still playing. And I said, 'Why didn't you put that one out?' And he said, 'Somebody stole the tape,' which was not true. He chickened out. People said it was like a Joni Mitchell album. There was some stylistic production to it, but not the material. It was more honest. He took the vulnerability out of it, and in the process, he took the depth out of it. The New York sessions were touching. The Minnesota sessions were not touching at all. He asserted himself again as a man." And I think that I find really interesting, that obfuscating the pronouns, making it less personal, for Joni Mitchell meant it was a reassertion of masculinity. And of course, this is coming from an artist who was often so vulnerable in her songs. I mean, that's the strength of so much of Joni Mitchell's songwriting, like on Blue, that it pours out of her. And that she felt in the moment when Bob Dylan stepped away from that and decided he did not want to be quite that vulnerable, she considered that to be the more masculine choice. I don't know. I thought that was quite interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it makes sense. Tangled Up in Blue being about blue.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that
Yeah.
influence
Yeah.
being part of it. It is funny that Joni Mitchell's like, the more it's like me, the better it is.
Mhm.
That's her sort of attitude.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am thinking about the Idiot Wind, the difference in Idiot Wind from the recorded album version to the early takes of it, where it was so much more vulnerable. And I feel like when people listen to that version, it gives them a different sense of the feeling of that song when it was
Mhm.
written. So yeah, I could definitely see where she was coming from in that critique.
Mhm. Mhm. And also, in general, when you think about Blood on the Tracks, the this is not in my notes, but I'm just thinking about, for example, Simple Twist of Fate and Shelter from the Storm, where it's always like he and she, so it's always like these third person narratives and stories, which also means that the singer doesn't have to say I and you. But then there's a switch, I think, at the end of both songs. So, I still believe she was my twin, but I lost the ring, and now I'm going on back again. Actually, I gotta take that back. Like, Shelter from the Storm is in the first person, wasn't it? Yeah. So maybe I should stick to my notes, because that was wrong.
Tangled Up in Blue, though, it's like,
yeah, Tangled Up in Blue. That's definitely true.
yeah, switches.
But so, to stay with Joni Mitchell, because she said, in 1997, this is the full quote. She said, that she made a conscious lyrical shift to you on The Hissing of Summer Lawns. And she says, I made the shift to you, which is a device that Dylan used for a lot of his autobiographical stuff, I suspect, that has a certain amount of self-protection built into it. Yes, I tried with Dylan's device to switch from I to you on Hissing of Summer Lawns, but people didn't like it. In my case, the device failed because people said suddenly, why are you pointing at us? In other words, with the I device, which wasn't a device, it was just the way I wrote. When I said I, the listeners could see themselves in it if they wanted to, but they could always say it's her because of the I. It's safer for the listener. I have a friend who was raised on my music, and I've been trying to get him into Dylan, but he doesn't like Dylan because he says Dylan is preaching at him, and that's the you device.
Can I that makes me think immediately of the philosophy of modern song, how so many of that prose is written in you, second person. And that
So
is what
true.
put a lot of people off. It put me off at times. And I weirdly see this discourse in like online spaces with like fanfic, is like people don't really like the you, because it's like I wouldn't do that. Like it makes it harder to have the frame of like it being fiction, because it's like implicating the viewer. So that's really interesting. I mean, yeah, again, it makes sense that she would come to that conclusion.
Yeah, because the second person, the you, also gives plausible deniability because it points outwards rather than
Right.
to your own person, and it also really, it deflects and eschews vulnerability. And the consequences are, and this is kind of what Joni is talking about, that it can be either read as accusatory or also as if you're making a general statement. And I suspect that that's what Dylan is going for in the philosophy of modern song. Because that's the nature of you, it can be you, or it can be that's just what you do, um, and I I have a couple of examples for songs where I think Bob Dylan does that really interestingly, but I also was wondering if this might be related a little bit to, I think one quote that is often used with Dylan, because he has alluded to that himself, is Arthur Rimbaud's "I is another," right? And so it's almost like I is another, and maybe it's you, you know. And I think from a pretty early age, when Bob Dylan got famous, I think that is when he started uh, with this othering of the I, when he started kind of pointing away from it. And I assume a lot of it had to do with his fame, um, that he uh, that he was maybe wary of the idea that his own person could be so easily legible in his songs, to the point where people maybe thought they knew him because they're listening to his songs. And you have all these songs where he is making it out like he is just like you. I'm just average common too, I'm just like him and the same as you. But that's sarcastic as well, right? I mean, you're not like totally convinced that he actually means that, because he also, you know uh always had this confidence and this swagger with which he carries himself as well, and especially in songs like I Shall Be Free, number 10. He's very he's owning his own uh identity as well. But I do wonder, and I know that we've actually texted about this recently, how fame might also play into this play with pronouns, um, because I is another also indicates this split between him in his own person and the Bob Dylan persona. Um, I mean, just think about our beautiful intro where he says, "Who's Bob Dylan?" Bob Dylan is an entity. It's a mask. It's a persona that exists, but it exists outwardly. It exists for the outside world, and is therefore, because of that, separate from the real person, from the person behind it. And that allows us, for better or worse, to project onto Bob Dylan, um, because of the way that we relate to his songs. And whatever we read into the songs is also what we project onto Bob Dylan. And whatever we need from an artist like Bob Dylan, we get to see in his persona. And in a way, the more he retreats behind that mask and retreats behind that persona, and stays hidden behind it, the more opportunity it gives us to connect with it.
Yeah, Bob Dylan, he's like the Bob Dylan you're thinking of is like a product. And this also I think goes back to our discussions of time, like how Bob Dylan sees time. I
Hmm.
think that the Bob Dylan that we interact with is always going to be a Bob Dylan of the past, and he's so future oriented that is like he's always like sectioning off his past behavior even and his past actions and his past artwork
Hmm.
as like a different guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It, I think that's a great point, because you have to, because he has to move on, right? He has to move
Hmm.
forward, and I think that is the flip side of us being obsessed with his work,
Yeah.
because it almost feels like the more people latch onto what he's done, the more he needs to get away from it, the more he needs to move forward, because otherwise he gets bogged down, and he gets too wrapped up in his past masterpiece, which is being heralded as such by all his fans, instead of
Hmm.
working on painting his next masterpiece, right?
Is it kind of crazy? I've begun to feel that way about the me that's on this podcast. Like when people talk about things I've said, I'm like, oh, that I kind of like depersonalize from the me that's online, like in videos and stuff, because I think it's someone of like the past, someone who had that thought at that time.
Oh my God, that resonates so much with me,
Really?
because because I mean, when I edit the podcast, when I first listen to the conversation, I'm like, oh, this is fun. I enjoy this. The listener's going to like that. When I'm on my fourth or fifth listen, I'm like, I have never in my life said anything interesting. So it gets, the
Yeah.
way you relate to your own stuff changes. And then you just have to be like, well, I have to move on. This is
Right.
this is going out. I hope people enjoy it, but I'm on to the next thing. We're on to the next thing. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I bet that's a feeling a lot of people have more now. We're in the age of social media and we
Hmm.
have these avatars, these digital selves that are just
Hmm.
like a fraction of who we are roaming around in the world.
But the thing is, yes, I think you're right. I think they are avatars, but also um, it is true. We
Mm.
are. The past is gone.
Hmm.
We are always only the people that we are in the present and where we're headed. So and I think when you have a tangible document like, um can we call a podcast a tangible document? I don't know if that's true, but if there's a document of it, like a recording, be that a podcast or a performance or a film or whatever, I think it is sometimes harder to move forward, but I think it's in a way it shouldn't be.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think Bob's a master at it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I really I've always admired that with Bob Dylan,
Hmm.
and let's continue to let that be our guiding light when it comes to our conversations as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm just going to continue telling you a little bit about what I've been
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking, if that's okay.
Next point.
The next point. So I've been interested in pronouns for a while.
Hmm.
Uh, I think for me, it started when we were both invited to the conference about Bob Dylan and masculinity in Denmark
Hmm.
2 years ago. 2 years ago. Because my first instinct of what I wanted to talk about and what I did end up talking about is actually on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. But what I originally wanted to talk about were Bob Dylan's songs where he addresses a woman, but you kind of get the feeling he's actually talking to himself.
Hmm.
Because that is a genre of Bob Dylan song that I'm really fascinated by. And there are a few. Some of his absolute classics, some of his greatest songs, arguably, are that, especially the songs where he gives a woman advice, like To Ramona
Mm.
or Like a Rolling Stone.
Like a Rolling Stone is what I was thinking of too there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've talked about this before. You've talked to Rob Kelly for Pod Dylan about Like a Rolling Stone. That was a great conversation. We can link that also in the show notes. Sweetheart Like You is another one.
Hmm.
And one that I've recently been thinking about that kind of also falls into this category is Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Because in Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, he is talking to to the woman about their failed relationship. And the refrain, the punchline, if you will, is, but don't think twice, it's all right. All these things went wrong. And, you kind of did all these things that I didn't really like. You fell short in all these ways, but don't think twice, it's all right. But really, that refrain is the message that he himself is trying to internalize. That's really what he's telling himself. He's the one that's leaving. He's the one who's waiting for a word that might make him change his mind. But ultimately, he is convincing himself that it's no use because the relationship is over and can no longer be saved. So what's the use in sitting and wondering why? He's speaking to himself at least as much as he's speaking to the woman. And he actually told Nat Hentoff in the liner notes to Freewheelin', it isn't a love song. It's a statement that maybe you can say to make yourself feel better. It's as if you were talking to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, Dylan is so singular in the type of songs he writes that are perceived as really like bitchy and uncold and unfeeling. But he is writing a song about it. Like he's writing a song about these relationships, which proves he does care. So the point you're making, yeah, it's like it's actually much sadder and deeper in that context because you can't really like it's kind of futile to give another person advice, and it's not even real advice. It's really only speaking to the speaker's own inner life, what he perceives is going on and how he is coping with it.
And you can only give advice that you yourself have learned.
Right.
And sometimes it feels like he is learning the advice that he's giving as he is writing the song.
Yeah.
And I
It's
mean,
like a processing tool.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to Ramona, it kind of ends on that note where he says, and someday maybe, who knows, baby, I'll come and be crying to you. But I always took that song to be so gentle and so poignant, because you feel that there's so much of himself in that advice that he gives. And the same is true for Like a Rolling Stone. And I'm with you. I think the reputation that song has gained, that it is incredibly sexist and that he is just wanting to put a woman down. I believe the song is even part of a compilation about sexism in rock music. I think it's called Under My Thumb. I personally just never took the song as that. I never took Like a Rolling Stone to be a pure put down song of someone else, because, well, I mean, even if you disregarded that Bob Dylan himself has said that this song was again such a turning point for him as a writer, and that it came out of him like vomit, and that he needed to write the song, which I think clearly shows that it's not a purely externalized song, that it is very, very personal to him. I also think that the entire song, like down to the, I mean, of course, there's a lot of what's I don't want to say venom, but of course there is like a lot of help me out. What am I looking for?
I like Venom. There's a lot of I don't know, not quite malice, but like snarkiness.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's definitely like it's an intense song, intense feelings that went into the song. But then we can also talk about the fact, and I mean, of course, that could be related to us living in a patriarchy, that it feels easier to write songs where you get either quite introspective, or even quite frustrated with yourself, quite angry with yourself, or very vulnerable when they're pointed outwards at a woman. because it's almost because it might be too uh, vulnerable, too revealing if you simply just wrote that in the first person. Is so in this case again, like using the you pronoun and pointing it outwards is a writing tool. It's an uh, um yeah, it's a tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because emotions are feminine coded.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and relationships establish a certain dynamic um that again allow for, I think, allow you a certain freedom to explore feelings within that dynamic rather than always having to relate them to yourself and to like
Mm-hmm.
fully like get down to why you feel a certain way. It's easier to say, um you know, you used to do all these things, and you know, and how does it feel now? You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's easier than to say like, well, maybe like I did all these things, and ooh, how does it feel now? You know, it's
Well, yeah, and I talk about on my tour, Edie Sedgwick is like thought to be the muse for that song or whatever. And it's, you can say about someone who was tricked into enjoying the spoils of fame only to find out that it's really unglamorous and just depressing, from the perspective of someone who was just exploded in fame and is
mhm.
now reaching new heights of fame he's ever never seen before. And he's observing all of these depressing things about what fame can materially be and how hard you can fall from it.
Yeah,
And if anything, it is expressing that fear that it could happen to the speaker.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that the chorus of Like a Rolling Stone has become the title of the countless books and movies and documentaries about Bob Dylan. So I think
Yeah,
subconsciously we've all picked up on the fact that the song is about Bob Dylan himself.
totally.
You
That's
know,
such a
so
good point.
so why are we still saying, oh, you know, this is just him putting down a woman?
Right.
Hmm. Uh, by the way, this is a slight sidebar. Uh, I saw this comment on Instagram recently. Every once in a while, I see something in a comment section. I'm like shaking my head.
Yeah.
But it was just a post about Bob Dylan, completely, it had nothing to do with Edie Sedgwick. And someone just commented saying, I hate him for what he did to Edie Sedgwick. And I was like, I'm I'm wondering if you know more about this, because I actually tried to do some research at some point, and
Yeah.
beyond the fact that they knew each other, and that
Mm-hmm.
I think he offered to help her establish a career and wanted to put her in touch with a couple of industry people, with a couple of people that helped him with his manage his career. Uh, I don't think there's any hard proof that they ever had a romantic relationship.
There's no proof. It was just said that she dated Bob Newirth, who
Yeah,
was
who
his
they were, who was
BFF.
very close. Yeah, yeah.
And it's, possible that they had some romantic relationship, but I also haven't found any evidence or hard proof of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. People
Maybe
just,
they
I
were just
just,
referring to the song itself as seen as like a dig at her.
I mean,
Who knows?
if Bob Dylan wrote Like a Rolling Stone about me, I would not be mad. I'd be
Hmm.
like, okay, thank you. I'm glad I inspired this
Yeah.
masterpiece. You know, it reminds me of Warren Zevon, who wrote a pretty nasty song called The French Inhaler about his first wife. A beautiful song, but quite like vicious. And I th- someone said that she would like play the song for anyone that she would meet and say like, this song is about me, because she was so proud that such a great song was written about her, even if it was quite a negative song. So I,
I thought you were going to say Warren Zevon once saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand. And that
his
guy
hair was perfect.
was pretty flattered.
Yeah, it's that too. Um, so let me see what else I have. Yeah. Um, I think what makes those songs particularly great, these songs that are directed at women, is that we can feel the singer is merging with the woman that he's addressing. And I think what that also means is that he is never singing from a place of superiority. I think even in like a Rolling Stone, where he is like a bit condescending, there is a lot of empathy in there too. Um, Maybe it depends on how you hear the song. I think the song is maybe open to different interpretations if you just look at the lyrics, and maybe sometimes depends on the performance. And I think maybe the album version sounds a little bit more condescending, but other versions sound a bit more empathetic. But I also recently reread, and I'm so sorry. He keeps coming up, Graylee Heron.
Yeah.
We just gotta. He just writes these beautiful pieces about Bob Dylan that I just keep wanting to quote as part of the podcast. He wrote a really amazing piece. I think it originally was on his Substack, but wrote it. He submitted it for the upcoming book on Dylan in the 80s, which you also are a part of. And he writes about Sweetheart Like You. And he uh, writes that there's a lot of Bob Dylan in the Sweetheart. And he writes, quote, Dylan talks to himself, giving advice he wishes he had received when he was new to the game. This strategy of replacing I with you can seem a protective deflection, but it's also a rhetorical and psychological move that breeds empathy. In this case, with women who have been mistreated and exploited by unscrupulous sexists within the music business. I think that's a brilliant observation. And he says so the singer, or Bob Dylan, and the sweetheart are really kindred spirits, in the sense that neither of them really belong in the dump they found themselves. Both are outsiders, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
He actually quotes us in this essay, which I think is really nice. He quotes
Yay.
our conversation that we had about Sweetheart Like You. So yeah, those are my thoughts on how Bob Dylan uses you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is more to be said about you in more recent years, or maybe in the last 2 or 3 decades of Bob Dylan's career, where I sometimes think his playing with pronouns, particularly the you, just gets really confusing. Where sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
think, who are you talking to?
Yeah, it's really open to interpretation.
Yeah, it's
It
like, is this?
widens if is he talking to a group of people? Is he talking to me, the listener? Is he talking about someone else in particular?
Yeah, and then he's like, "I'll take a sword and hack off your arm." It's like, "Ooh, me? What did I do?" you know, I think especially when, 'cause he does sometimes veer into this really violent imagery,
Mm-hmm.
and that always just comes completely out of nowhere when that is directed at a you. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
who is this you?
Yeah,
Who are you so mad at right now?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like in Black Rider. I mean,
yeah.
that's directed to the Black Rider, but it hits the you. It's
hmm
very confrontational.
hmm hmm Or I, I want to create my own version of you.
Right.
Who?
Who's the you?
Who?
And then that's another one where you're like, is the you the him? Is you
hmm
standing in for me, myself?
Yeah, yeah. I think on Rough and Rowdy Ways um, there are many instances like that. I mean, even I've made up my mind to give myself to you.
Yeah.
The you keeps changing. It says, "Take me out
Mm.
traveling. You're a traveling man." It's like,
Mm.
traveling man. Is this the same person that you're giving yourself to? It's so. Uh, I This is something that I want to think about a bit more, and to see if there is a coherent thread that runs through the way that he uses the you in this case. Or if I have more thoughts on that, I don't at the moment. But beyond the fact that I think it's interesting that he's once again uh, using pronouns to obfuscate in his songs, to sometimes throw the listener off his tracks a
Mm-hmm.
little bit.
Makes it very vague.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the titles of my pronouns note. It was like, you are so good with words and at keeping things vague.
Mhm.
You know.
Does Dylan have the most pronouns in one lyric ever with it is not he or she or them or it that you belong to?
Probably. So woke. That one. And then there is, I mean, I think I would maybe for now skip the third person, he and she, and it, because I think those are usually in narratives more conventional pronouns to use. I think they're more interesting as, for example, in Tangled Up in Blue, when they are being swapped out for I and you, and there is a confusion of pronouns. I think then it's really interesting. But I don't have any thoughts off the top of my head on the third person beyond it is not he or she or them or it that you belong
I
to.
have one on an
Please.
leopard skin pillbox hat. I
Mm-hmm.
always wondered if this line was a flub when he says, I don't mind him cheating on me, but I wish he'd get that off his head. Because it's like,
Mm.
is that just a archaic like phrasing of someone who's cheating on you, is to say that the person they're cheating on you with is the one cheating on you? It just kind of confuses me, and it does make it kind of gay, like what
Mm-hmm.
he's cheat I don't mind him cheating on me,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
suddenly it's about this other unnamed third party. um
I mean, I think in the mid '60s, Bob Dylan was actually that's a really good point. I'm glad you bring that up, because I think in the mid '60s there was a lot of uh, playing with he or she in in order to kind of like play with gender as well.
mhm,
Anyway,
mhm.
let's talk about we.
Yeah.
The next pronoun. Um, I think I don't have very much on this one, but I think Bob Dylan sometimes likes to use the we ironically. And the biggest one that I think of here is with God on our side,
Mm,
where it is clear that he does not agree with his common narrative of we.
mhm,
And I think, especially in the light of that, and knowing that Bob Dylan sometimes likes to be a contrarian who doesn't like to be part of a we, I think it's so ironic that he was invited to be part of We Are the World.
yeah.
Because really it's the opposite of what he is all about, right?
Mhm.
Um yeah, that was just a very short note on we, but now I want to talk about they, because that's a pronoun that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Uh because they is maybe the vaguest of pronouns, because all it really does, is it firmly points away from yourself, um, more so than the you, because again, like, you can be general, which means you are included in that you, and the you can kind of comprise another person and also you, whereas they is like 100% other.
Mhm.
Um, so it points away not just from yourself but also from anyone that you're addressing, because it is referring to someone who's completely outside of the situation and outside of the conversation. And I, also in the 80s book, Paul Haney writes about Clean Cut Kid, and
Mm.
he says, in cases where the blameworthy force can't be reduced to a single entity, Dylan often morphs the adversary to they, as
Mhm.
happens in Clean Cut Kid. Um, and there are so many examples of this. Anything from Only a Pawn in Their Game to George Jackson, Joey, Lenny Bruce, Roll On John, Murder Most Foul. Very often they kill someone.
Mm.
That's often the case. Like, they are a nefarious force,
Mhm.
and very often they're responsible for someone's death. And I think um, the way I see it is this use of they can also be a really folksy move, again, because it helps to draw a circle around an in group, and everyone outside that group is part of the out group. But it is also it also establishes an intimacy that can be quite conspiratorial.
Yeah.
And
Can I ask what you mean by folksy?
I meant
like in folk music, or like
no, I meant more that he's trying to be kind of like a bit like buddy buddy. I don't know if this is, maybe I'm not using folksy right. Let me look up a definition
no,
of
I'm
folksy.
just curious.
No, you're right. Folksy definition. Our producer's just pulling this up for us. I mean, it says informal and unpretentious. His folksy direct style. That's kind of how I mean it. That it's not it's not highbrow in any way. I think it's very much kind of like drawing someone into your narrative and kind of like making them part of the story that you're telling. Of course, there's also the song "They Killed Him," which is not a Dylan original. It's a Chris Christopherson song, but he covered it. Yes. And I think that is kind of the long and short of a lot of Bob Dylan songs. They killed him. George Jackson, Joey, Lenny Bruce, Roll On John, Murder Most Foul, only a pawn in their game. You know, and they means different things in these various songs, and I think that I'm particularly interested in how this plays out in Lenny Bruce, Roll On John, and Murder Most Foul. I mean, I find it very interesting in all of those cases because I think it tells these stories almost, again, in this case, really like a folk song, like one of those outlaw ballads where someone is killed and there is this feeling that he was the person who was killed was a kind of hero, and he was killed by these outside forces who didn't get what he was all about. And I think Bob Dylan sometimes really likes to write songs like that, you know, like with Joey Gallo, who was a mob guy, not really a good guy, but I think Bob Dylan sings about him like this outlaw from a folk story. But it's interesting with a song like Roll On John, where there is one person who killed John Lennon. Mark David Chapman shot John Lennon. But in Roll On John, he says they shot him in the back and down he went. So I think the use of they is pretty interesting here, right? I mean, maybe it's because they didn't want to use the pronoun he twice in one line.
Also an issue in fanfics when you have two guys. Sorry.
Exactly. And in Murder Most Foul, he really like brings this to the utmost, to almost like to its conclusion, where it's at its most conspiratorial, because there he is against the lone gunman theory, obviously, Bob Dylan, and instead of making it out like one person shot John F. Kennedy, he uses they. And I think that's quite interesting. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty obvious pattern that Dylan's always talking about. Like, these murderers are set up to be that way by society, most clearly in Pawn in Their Game, that it's like not just the actions of one person, but all the actions that led that person to do that thing. And it's the statement he clumsily says at that when he's getting the award, the emergency civil liberties freedom committee, I think is what it is, when he says I see myself in Lee Harvey Oswald. But it's like I think he is always, even when accusing these murderers, implicates a larger group of people, which is why it's they. And what you're saying about Roll On John is so interesting because on my tours, I make the connection between Mark Chapman and AJ Weberman. like these
Mm.
two stalkers, that John Lennon was much more accessible to these crazy people. He was much more open, and Dylan very private, very against being around all these stalkers, very secure about these. And it doesn't end well for John Lennon in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see Dylan's perspective, having had threats made against his life multiple times throughout his career. Like, he probably does see that as like a force, as a group of people. Like, it could have been any one of these people who did that to him.
That's
And
so
in the
interesting.
case of any of these cases, actually, Hattie Carroll is like killed by one person, but he zooms out to the larger societal issues there. It could have been any other person, white man, done that to her.
Mm-hmm. That's the
And in
only
each,
pawn in the game,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, but it's just because I think you're so right, and I think that is really uh, a thought that he kind of arrived at fairly early on. I mean, arguably, you could even say like Masters of War is that already. Um, but there he kind of articulates who the they is. It's the Masters of War,
Yeah.
um, and I think it was around the time of the Times Era changing that he switched to a more um, general they. And obviously that also means it leaves these songs open in a way to interpretation as well. It's like, who do you think the they is? I
Hmm.
mean, at least sometimes I maybe not with, I think, uh only a pawn in the game and Hattie Carroll. I think that's pretty clear. But
It's also ironic that I feel like when they is used conspiratorially by like other people, there is very often like an anti-Semitic cabal conspiracy behind that they,
mm,
um, which is not the way Dylan uses it, but it's just an interesting, like, he does kind of borrow that phrasing when he's getting into his own conspiracy thing, but he's
yeah,
generally talking more about society at large.
yeah, I think the they has become such a strange phenomenon, especially on the internet, especially since the pandemic, when everyone just started really getting into conspiracy theories. And
Hmm.
now you just, I don't know, they is so overused.
Mm,
Whenever there's something someone doesn't like, it's like, well, they don't want you to do this and this. And it's like, who's they?
right.
It just, they is just the boogeyman for any idea or concept that you don't like.
Yeah.
And it's very often like actually quite far removed from actual people, actual groups of people. um at when you actually try to articulate it. So that's why I think that is why I've been so interested in the they in Bob Dylan, because it does engage in that like a little bit.
Hmm.
um but I also think it predates this phenomenon on the internet where um people are really getting lost in these conspiracy theories, and I don't know, in trying to draw lines between in groups and out groups. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe people have always done that, but I just think with the internet at the moment, it's easier than ever and
Hmm.
more frustrating than ever.
But it's like, it's more of a farce than ever, because we are in the age of information. You can see the truth or the non-truth like that on the internet. And more often than not, the terrible things that they are doing, the government or whatever, are totally out in the open. And you
Hmm.
don't really have to dig too deep for there to be some kind of, organized thing going on against a group of people. But yet these conspiracies persist, that there's something even deeper and
Hmm.
shadowier going on behind the scenes. But it's like, we all know what's going on, and it doesn't change what's going on.
It's the power of confirmation bias.
Hmm.
You only want to believe what you already believe, and most
Right.
people don't like to change their minds. So if you see the facts, it's easier than ever to just kind of turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah. Why do you think? I mean, why questions are impossible, but why do you think the Murder Most Foul is so in that like conspiracy world where it is like something happened that we don't know about? Do you think he really just fell for some kind of story?
I mean, I've been wondering that myself, and I think actually this is a super interesting question. Um, for one, because the timing of Murder Most Foul is so ironic because it was released at the beginning of the pandemic before so many people really went down the rabbit hole with conspiracy theories. Um, but I mean, I would not be surprised if, ooh, I don't know if I can say that, but I'm interested in the parallel between Bob Dylan singing about conspiracy theories and the way some Bob Dylan fans talk about Bob Dylan, and uh, how sometimes Bob Dylan fans sound like conspiracy theories when they talk about him. I mean,
Mhm.
if you if you tell someone who is only familiar with the bare bones of Bob Dylan's career about Scott Wormuth's work, and
Mhm.
say like, well, and then in Chronicles he takes all these bits and pieces, you sound like a conspiracy theorist, you sound
Mhm.
a little nuts. uh, and I don't know if Bob Dylan was thinking about that. I don't know if Bob Dylan was aware of this kind of parallel there, but surely by now he must know that everything that he puts out is being poured over and is being analyzed and has podcasts dedicated to it. I mean, even
Yeah.
with, I think I talked about this with Sam in the last episode about with his Patreon. It's like, do we see these Patreon missives as something that is worth dissecting? Is this something that's coming from him? How do we
Mhm.
read these? It's I think there's always like this question with him. And yeah,
I
what do
like
you
that. I like that thing we settled on that with the Patreon, he's just kind of messing with us. That's my favorite theory about it in general.
yeah.
But regarding Murder Most Foul, I could really see him like just like any other old man getting really into the details of the case.
Yeah.
Um, and especially the way he tells it as something like that he is entirely separate from all these other things going on
Hmm.
in the culture and stuff. He's very much an outside viewer on the events, even though we know he was like there.
Yeah.
Um,
He sings like he never said, I see something of myself in Lee Harvey Oswald.
right,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I could see him getting into like some books or documentaries about it because historically, Bob Dylan loves a good story. He loves a story more than the truth. He loves a myth. He
Mm.
he got inspired to tell the story of the hurricane because I think it was a good story. Um, and I think that is above all else for him. But he is a smart person at the same
Mm.
time. So I guess um I think him writing it adds a little more credibility to all of those conspiracies about the JFK assassination.
Mm. And it's also interesting that Bob Dylan mentions uh, other presidents that were assassinated as well on the album.
Mm.
You know, sometimes in veiled references. I mean, I think the reference to Lincoln's assassination is it, again like conspiracy theories. Someone found that the line "I carry two pistols, I carry four pistols and two large knives" was used in a pamphlet um, after Lincoln, I think, got a threat, like an assassination threat, and had bodyguards with him, and they carried four pistols and two large knives.
Whoa.
But it's very veiled,
That's
and then
so cool.
obviously, yeah, I know. McKinley hollowed, McKinley squalled, and then I think there's one more. I'm not sure.
That's really cool.
All but one American president that was assassinated is referenced in rough and rowdy ways. So clearly this is a topic that he is in some way thinking about, and and then you have the artwork for False Prophet, where the shadow looks a lot like a certain president who was president in 2020 and is now president again. So I don't know if this is Bob Dylan making a direct statement.
I mean,
Or if
that
this is
he's making us into conspiracy theorists by placing all these breadcrumbs.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah,
exactly. And I can only assume that he's getting a kick out of this. I mean, it must be like a. You say what did you say? That you like to what did you say? That you like to imagine that Bob Dylan is just doing it for fun, or what was it?
Yeah, to get to mess with us.
Yeah, exactly. That is basically. I like to think that Bob Dylan is just doing things because it amuses him.
Yeah,
It amuses him to think that we might pick up on it and then also have some sort of response to it.
Yeah, and it could be nothing more than that, and that is enough.
Yeah, exactly. That was the Bob Dylan hotline. And if you have a question for us, please record us a voice memo. What's it called? A voice memo. And send it to bobdylanhotline@gmail.com. And we'll do our best to answer it.
But the answer, my friend,
is blowing in the wind.